young people with ASD see the world in a different way to those of us without ASD, and different ways of seeing things and thinking and processing information is a really big part of ASD, autism spectrum disorders. So one of the first things, and one of the sometimes more noticeable things, is the young people may see things in a very black or white or concrete way. So things are right or wrong, and the grey areas and the little bits in between, which form a lot of sort of decisions and things that happen and go on around us, are really difficult for them to understand or to notice. So young people with ASD may have problems with, say, white lies, because if you've been taught that it's wrong to lie, or a rule that you don't tell lies, then why would you ever lie? It's always wrong, even if it would help the situation or stop not hurting someone's feelings, something like that. So that can be really tricky, the rigidity in thinking. I had a young boy who was really upset when his operation was cancelled. He was meant to go into hospital to have his tonsils removed, and it was cancelled the day before because an emergency had come in, and he just could not understand how an emergency could happen the day before, because in his mind an emergency happened like 5 minutes before or a minute before, and that was really, really upsetting and traumatic. Well, not traumatic, but really, really difficult for him. So routines and difficulty with change are another thing that we notice with young people with ASD, and this can be really tricky for them. And sometimes routines or a liking for sameness can seem really out of proportion or unusually powerful to those of us without ASD. So parents may be really confused or really bewildered when a small change in, say, cereal or margarine or what someone has for lunch causes a really, really big upset. So even little changes can be really difficult to manage, as can be changes in the routine when the young person is used to a certain way of doing things. And interestingly, and I think confusingly for those of us without ASD, sometimes the magnitude of the change, so little changes in the morning routine, can be as big or as troubling as really big changes, or getting to school and there being a different teacher or some different activity. But a lot of this can be helped and worked through with obviously discussion in advance and warning, and sometimes preparation, or even the visual timetables or pictures of what's going to happen if something different is happening. So by being aware of this difficulty, that's really important, to put sort of strategies in place and think about it with the young person and just prepare them in advance. So theory of mind is the concept that all of us can think and imagine and know that other people have different thoughts to ourselves. So thoughts, feelings, plans or hopes. So, and that the things that go on in their mind are different to what goes on in our mind. Sort of like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, or imagining how they feel if something happens, which we all learn and develop as we grow older, and as sort of practicing and with examples and experiences as we with young children. Children with ASD don't develop this theory of mind, the awareness that other people perhaps think differently. So it can be really difficult for them to imagine what someone else is thinking, which causes all sorts of problems socially and in relationships. Parents are often upset, for example, when their young person doesn't seem to realise how upset I am or how embarrassed I am, and they come and say this was so bad and they just didn't care that I was upset, and that's really distressing. But it isn't that the person doesn't care, it is that the person can't imagine it and can't work it out. Equally, it can make some young people vulnerable to not perhaps understanding fully what someone else is planning or what someone else is thinking, and whether the intentions are friendly or things like that, which can make the world quite a scary place. Another impact that the difficulty of this theory of mind has is in obviously discussions and seeing someone else's viewpoint and thinking, I think this but they think that, or they might think this because of that. So in discussions it can make someone with ASD seem really, really stubborn or difficult to sort of change their mind, or more argumentative than we'd expect, and that isn't always because they're being difficult on purpose or troublesome or wanting to cause arguments. It's literally that it's difficult to see a different point of view, so it's difficult to understand why no one else is agreeing or accepting. So children with ASD sometimes focus on the small details or obsessive thinking, and that comes out in lots of different ways. So by obsessive thinking, being really, really interested in something, and really, really knowing the background or the dates or the facts, or the really knowing into real depth some of what they're interested in. So the Thomas the Tank Engine is a really good example for the young children who know all about the trains and all about the numbers and the characters. And as children get older, football players, but not just the football players and their teams, but their numbers, their ages, where they came from, all sort of a little bit more facts than we'd expect. The attention to detail can also manifest in interest, sort of as in interests of really little details. So rather than enjoying a big toy or a whole part of a machine or a light, they may be interested in a really small little part of it that flickers or turns, or in some small bit of information in other facts, which can lead to problems, say, with seeing the big picture and putting everything together and thinking, well, this has happened to me, or this is part of this. But the implications and what that sort of means generally can be a bit tricky for them to work out. Another difference in the way children with ASD process and think information is an impact they have on their imagination. And we'll notice this in particularly young children. I think they're playing as imaginative as other children. So perhaps their role plays, or they're pretending to be something, or when they play with cars or trains, they frequently act out a scenario they've seen or a scenario they've seen in a TV show, rather than sort of playing and developing their own games. And this obviously has impacts for them playing and entertaining themselves, or needing someone to entertain and work with them. The imagination, which we sometimes isn't so obviously, but it causes as many difficulties, is the imagination of what might happen, or a hypothetical, if I did this, what will happen? So predicting the future, or predicting what's going to happen, predicting what they should do, can be really, really tricky, or preparing for, say, a change in the weather, or if someone was upset or someone wasn't there. So knowing what to sort of plan for the future can be really difficult and really anxiety provoking. Another way that the difference that children with ASD think and process information shows itself is in their understanding of humour. So obviously there's lots of different types of jokes that we all find different things funny, seeing things or hearing things. But it can be particularly difficult for children with ASD to understand the wordy jokes, the spoken jokes, which rely on us guessing how someone would feel, or how embarrassing it would be, or perhaps the double meanings of words used in different ways. But children with ASD often find visual humour very funny, so the slapstick, sort of someone falling over or someone walking into a telegraph pole, that's more of the humour that they enjoy, which can sometimes be a bit unusual, say, for their age, and people think, oh, you're a bit grown up, or that not what you expect them to enjoy, but that is part of their way of thinking and what they find funny.